How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Bloodborne Chalice Dungeons. Today we're going to be starting off journeying into the start of the harder Chalice Dungeon, starting with Lower Pthumeru, which is only a depth 3, so kind of medium-ish difficulty. And then we'll be moving on to Ailing Loran, which is our first depth 4 dungeon, I think. So that's going to represent a noticeable jump up in difficulty. Today we're doing post-commentary. I've started cutting stuff into highlights because the dungeons are honestly getting too long, and I don't have enough to say about them to keep them interesting. Plus, it's gonna start getting boring watching just the sheer repetition, the same number of rooms, all that stuff. If I leave the entire trek in, you're not missing out on anything important. They're just kind of easy to navigate and explore. There's nothing really special going on in them. And if there is something special, I will of course show it off. Like, back there, that cool new enemy type wielding the greatsword. It's just that, like, you can only look at the same configuration of the same couple of rooms so many times, filled with the same enemies, before it starts to get boring. The Chalice dungeons aren't bad, they're just kind of monotonous at times. The boss fights, usually pretty good, almost always pretty good, to be honest. With a few rare exceptions like this one, another Merciless Watchers refight. Thrilling. It's just that the rest of the Chalice dungeons, they need more variety. Whether that be tile sets, room configurations, enemy compositions, they need a little bit something extra. I don't want to keep harping on that, though. What I will harp on, weird that you could just stand in their stomachs and the bullets just go right over you. It's almost like they didn't plan that enemy type out very well. What does bug me about this is that they not only recycled that standard enemy type for a boring trio boss fight before, they did it twice. And this is a chance, and really all it is a chance to play with the scythe some more, which I love. I love the scythe. Do love that weapon. But on to layer 2, I've sped this part up to save a little bit of time. What I'm looking to show here, though, is the path to a really, really handy item. Or at least it's handy if you plan on doing the later Chalice dungeons. I talked about this earlier on, but it's called the Workshop Extractor tool. It's a workshop tool that lets you convert other Chalice dungeon materials to arcane hazes. And you need a lot of arcane haze in order to open up the later Chalice dungeons. Most of the depth 4, or maybe it's only depth 5, I can't exactly remember. You need something like between 70 and 90 to do the required Chalice dungeons. And this saves you a lot of what would otherwise be grinding. So, you follow this path down after the Layer 1 boss. Layer 1 Lower Pthumeru, that is. And it's this side pathway full of guillotines and all that other cool stuff. Traps that we haven't actually seen up to this point. And you'll eventually come out to a couple of split pathways. I thought this was it. I was getting ready to say you'll eventually come out to the chest. No, I think the chest with the Workshop Extractor tool is actually in a pit with a bunch of rats in it. Might have actually been in the drop that I avoided. But I'm pretty sure there's a better way to get there. And if there is... Oh, am I super wrong about this? My memory's failing me here. No, you have to go from the lower layer here. Drop is actually a convenient way of getting down here. There are a couple of more tunnels I believe you have to follow down. If you're following this video, though, you should find the extractor tool, no problem. Probably easier than I did, because I appear to have gotten lost. I actually don't remember getting lost when I recorded this. Should be just ahead, though. Looks like it's guarded by another one of those Merciless Watchers, one with a... Oh, not one with a gun. Footage was going a little bit too quick. The hardest variant of that enemy to fight, I think, is the one with the red hot... Looks like some kind of branding iron, or some kind of blunt object. Anyway, it's in this sarcophagus. Sarcophagi are usually the chests in Chalice dungeons. with the best loot in them. Workshop Haze Extractor, that's what it's called. So we'll take a look at that description real quick, and then we'll move along. It is a misplaced workshop tool from the Hunter's Dream. The hunter who retrieves this can extract arcane haze from ritual materials, but last spent materials are lost. Not a terribly insightful item description, actually. But different dungeon materials yield different amounts of arcane haze. Like Tomb Mold 5, for instance, yields, I don't know, I'm just gonna make an arbitrary number up. Let's say 8 or 10, maybe. And there are Chalice dungeon materials you can buy from the Insight shop, so if you have enough Insight, you essentially just get free arcane haze. Or, well, you get to buy arcane haze for Insight. It's not free. But it's a very handy tool to have, because otherwise you have to grind arcane haze out by killing centipedes, and that's boring as shit. So, this enemy, this is the third variant of the Undead Giant that we fought. In my opinion, it's by far the hardest one. We fought one with the scythe, and we fought the one with the cleaver and the cannon, and now this one. This one is just like the first variant, except he's clapped in iron chains, which flail around as he moves, and they can hurt you. They also give him deceptively large range. They reach a lot further than his arms do, and during the later phase of the fight, which we're entering into now, which I didn't mean to actually, he could do that. He could create a hurricane of flailing chains, and they can just about one-shot me. If I'm dashing, or if I'm in the middle of an attack and they counter-hit me, they will one-shot me. Add to this, the room is pretty narrow, so it's easy for him to cut you off, so he's incredibly dangerous at this point. My plan was, early on, I wanted to do as much damage as possible from the front to avoid hitting that cyst that was on his back. Because remember, if you hit the cyst enough times, it'll burst, and he will take a huge chunk of his life in damage when that bursts. Unfortunately, I accidentally hit it too early and wasted a lot of damage. The plan was that I was going to skip the dangerous part of the fight by bringing him to low health when that phase starts, and then hitting the cyst to bring him out of that phase as quickly as possible. Fortunately, it didn't work out, because I accidentally hit that cyst too early. Nonetheless, boss is still not that challenging. He can be pretty dangerous, though. But moving on to Layer 3, we have a new dog variant. These are the worst ones by far. They're big, rabid, red-eyed, gigantic, fire-breathing motherfuckers. They come in packs led by a boss that we fought earlier, a normal enemy version of a boss that we already fought. It's the Keeper of Ancient Sins, the one with the bone ash armor and the katana. I got lucky with these dogs, though. I kind of bottlenecked them in that hallway. What you can also do is you can drop them down the pit back there and just climb up the ladder, because dogs are stupid and they don't know how to climb ladders. Finally, we have the boss of Layer 3. Ram, the vacuous spider, is back. I love Ram, the vacuous spider. So silly. And I love, even more than that he's catching on as just kind of like this silly gag boss, even though he's quite tough for some people. But he's caught on as like a gag boss, kind of, in the way that like people loved Solaire. Like the best was seeing at the end of one of the Jimquisition episodes, Jim praise Ram, the vacuous spider. So normally I wouldn't clear out the spiders, but for the first wave of them, since Ram can't actually hurt you in the opening phase of the fight anyway, I went ahead and cleared them out because the room is quite small. And I got lucky with this teleport. I don't know if it's fixed or not. It might be a random teleport, it might be fixed, so it might not be lucky then. But he teleported right on top of me and I got to continue my damage on him. It's essentially bringing him out of Phase 2 for free. I've heard whispers in the speedrunning community that there is actually a way to one-cycle Ram. And I'm not familiar with the strategy or the tactic that you would use to kill him in one cycle, but it sounds incredibly handy. Rom, I've learned firsthand, is kind of a pain in the ass for a speedrun. There are a couple of bosses with worse RNG than him, but Rom can get not rough as in difficult, but he can waste a lot of your time sometimes. He's not bad, though, because the Tonitrus is amazing, especially at +9. The Tonitrus rips him apart. What I'm showing off here is this is a room I had previously done, and I killed the enemy, which I think was a Loran Silver Beast. No, it couldn't have been a Silver Beast in here, it was something else. I killed the enemy in here with a visceral attack, and then when I came back later... Oh, it was one of those goddamn Ju-On the Grudge monsters. When I came back later, because I killed that enemy with a visceral attack, a tick from Kainar's Castle, or one of the ones that we find there, was lapping up the blood. Oh, the Bloodletting Beast is nuts. I love this fight. This thing is so cool looking. The Chalice dungeons tend to deliver on the boss fights. And there's a surprisingly unique number of boss fights and assets found in the Chalice dungeons. It's just going through the dungeons is the rough part. God, can you? If there was a boss rush mode instead of the Chalice dungeons, and they had the Chalice dungeons unique boss fights in them, that would be incredible. I would love something like that. I would love a boss rush mode in general. More games need boss rush modes. Like, every game that has bosses, I would love to see a boss rush mode in. There is some kind of boss rush stipulation in some of the root chalices. You can actually get boss rushes. As in, like, rooms where you just fight multiple bosses back to back. The Bloodletting Beast is... I should actually talk about him. Unfortunately, he's not a very hard fight. Mainly because he has the same weakness that most gigantic Souls bosses have, and it's that you can fit between his legs. And once you're between his legs, there's almost nothing he can do about it. He can kind of stomp around. He has an attack where he can grab you... Holy shit, I love the range on that punch. He can grab you between his legs, but if you're moving around a lot, he has a lot of trouble doing anything to you. And when he does hit you, as he's done to me a couple of times, when he does actually hit you, it's still not a big deal because he can't one-shot you. And he, like, if you're between his legs, he hits you so infrequently. Like, I got grabbed there, and it's... Wow, he's just gonna freak the camera out. It's gonna do a lot of damage, but... he needs some kind of reliable way to just fucking one-shot you if you're between his legs, because that's how you trivialize most Souls bosses, is just stand between their legs, and they can't do anything to you. Some of the bosses that we'll see later on actually find a really effective way to counter that tactic. And from him, we get a Defiled Chalice. Only this Defiled Chalice is cursed. Curses are caused by inciting the anger of the Great Ones, and they're used to hex others. Special materials are required to complete the ritual. To try one's hand at curses, first seek the Bastard of Loran. Ailing Loran is where we're heading next. Before I actually talk about Ailing Loran, though, which is our first step for Chalice, there's a little bit of lore associated with the Bloodletting Beast. I'm sure that over time, the community is going to discover a lot of little neat nuances of lore, connected with a lot of stuff in the Chalice dungeons. The Chalice dungeons are kind of like the basis, the foundation for the main plot of the game. The blood of the Great Ones and the Great Ones themselves were first contacted in the Pthumerian Labyrinth. And I guess for the inhabitants, the denizens of Loran, they also found what the citizens of Yharnam found in the Pthumerian tombs. So there's lore going on in the background that's not quite apparent. But the Chalice dungeons form the basis for the lore of the game. It's just that once you're actually in here, you're not gaining that much new insight, usually. But about the Bloodletting Beast, to go back to him, he might be Lawrence. If you remember, Lawrence's skull was found in the back of the Grand Cathedral on the first floor of it after you fight Vicar Amelia, after you beat her. His skull has a giant gash in it. I believe it's the Greater Pthumeru Chalice, which is the very last one, the root chalice for that dungeon. You can fight a variation of the Bloodletting Beast, which has an identical gash in the skull. So it's quite possible that the Bloodletting Beast, likely even that the Bloodletting Beast is Lawrence himself. What the implication of that is, I haven't really thought through yet. I'll get back to you once I've fleshed my thoughts on that out a little bit more. But our first Layer 1 boss of Ailing Loran, dungeon that I actually like. I showed it off back there just for a brief second. This dungeon has a really nice color palette, and it's got this cool windy, sandy effect, kind of like brownish, golden hues to it. It's very dark. It gives you the feeling of like exploring like an Egyptian tomb. Here we have a first bit of spider fuckery. So, phantom spiders come flooding in at you, and that's not the most dangerous part about this, but look how many of them there are. There's a reason why there are so many more spiders, so many more phantoms than you're used to seeing. It's because there are 2 Bell Maidens here. Normally there's just the one, but you have twice as many spiders as usual, because there are twice as many maidens in this area as you would normally find. I know a lot of people struggle with this in particular, with whenever there are multiple phantom spiders and multiple Bell Maidens. The trick is to split them up. Split the spiders up as much as possible, use ledges to your advantage, their pathing is usually shitty, and... God, she had just this magic pixel of health, so I shot her. And there must be a third one around somewhere, because not all of the spiders depopped. Up next, after the Beast-Possessed Soul, the first boss of Ailing Loran, the Layer 2 boss is another Bloodstarved Beast, which I think is the 3rd time that we have fought this boss in the game. 2nd time in a Chalice dungeon. And this time, I screwed up pretty bad, because I forgot that this boss was the 2nd boss, and I forgot to put antidotes on my quick select bar. So I'm gonna wind up getting poisoned pretty soon in this fight, and I kinda just had to muscle through it. Which, probably the incorrect response to that problem. If I'm being honest, I probably had enough time to just go into my menu, into my inventory, and put the antidotes on my quick select, and that probably would have saved me a little bit of a headache, but that is not the course of action I chose to go with. But it just goes to show that if you keep calm and you don't panic, even when Bloodstarved Beast has you on the back foot, even the hardest version of the Bloodstarved Beast that you're going to encounter in the game, is still not that bad. And I say that because I know that a lot of people have a hard time with the Bloodstarved Beast. The Bloodstarved Beast is likely to be the first boss that people encounter in the main game that really gives them a lot of trouble. And it's because it's really a really neat psychological trick. It's because the moment the Bloodstarved Beast poisons you, you panic. And it's really good at inciting that panic. And the moment that you start panicking against this boss is the moment that its aggression becomes really, really apparent. And the boss just puts tons and tons of pressure on you, which can be very difficult to deal with if you're an inexperienced player. But as with pretty much anything in a Dark Souls game, and Demon Souls, and Bloodborne, panic is your worst enemy. If you can keep calm and keep yourself from making bad decisions, then you'll be alright. It's just when you panic, you start making really poor decisions. You start playing in a way that's suboptimal. Whereas normally, your decisions would be pretty good, and they would carry you through the fight. You play very differently when you're on the back foot and you're panicking, though, when that pressure is on. You start changing your playstyle. You become a lot more defensive. You stop doing the things that made you successful leading up to that point. And it's normally only one small mistake that kind of snowballs that leads you into that point. I did consume a lot of blood vials, a lot more than I would have liked against the Bloodstarved Beast. And hey, an Ailing Loran Silver Beast. Just decided to show him off because I don't think there are any other Silver Beasts in this video. And I made that point when we hit the Nightmare Frontier that I thought the Nightmare Frontier was... the Nightmare in general was probably set in Loran because of the Silver Beasts. They're actually called Loran Silver Beasts. And finally, we come to the coolest motherfucker ever, the Abhorrent Beast. I prefer to call him Stormlurker, though, because this boss is a goddamn lightning-themed flame lurker. And I love this fight. This is a great fight. This is Beast that the Bandage Man turns into the Bandage Man from the Forbidden Woods if you attack him. And he is very, very tough. And I am, with that in mind, proud of how hard I kicked the shit out of him. Beast Blood Pellets are really good, especially when you couple them with something like the Transformed Kirkhammer, because the Transformed Kirkhammer builds that meter up very, very quickly with each strike. If you're wielding a faster weapon, it tends to not build up very quickly. And because of how quickly it depletes, faster weapons are not great to use with the Beast Blood Pellet. If you have something that's building the gauge like this, though, one strike, generating a significant amount of beasthood, yeah, it's nasty. And it affects all of your physical damage, which I believe includes visceral attacks. In fact, let's see. Yep, I'm positive it does include visceral attacks. I was thinking back to a fight that I recorded earlier this morning. Yep, Beast Blood Pellet's pretty good. There's a variation of the Abhorrent Beast, just to very lightly spoil something coming up. There's a variation of the Abhorrent Beast that we fight later, which goes even harder on the lightning enchantment theme. He gains a couple of new moves, which is what I like to see when they recycle an enemy type. Like they did that with the Undead Giant. They recycled him 3 times, essentially, but each fight is very different. And from him, we get the Lower Loran Chalice, a depth 5 dungeon. Chalice that breaks the Labyrinth seal, but only a root chalice. We've seen that. There are traces, remains of medical procedures in parts of Ailing Loran. Whether these were attempts to control the scourge of the beast or the cause of the outbreak is unknown. And that is going to do it for now. We have finished 2 Chalice dungeons. Gonna try to keep that pace up for the remainder of the dungeons. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy. Have a good one.